Melissa,
Yes.
thanks for taking some time away from your normal day at the office to get on video a little bit and let your clients get to know a little bit about you. I know it's out of the ordinary for you. But let's start at the top. Just want to get a feel for you as a person and then as a paralegal. So walk me through where'd you grow up?
Yeah. So my parents are actually from Jalisco, Mexico, and they immigrated to Ontario, California. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
Well, I was born in Montclair, right by there.
Okay.
And my dad never wanted to leave. He said, "This is my Ontario. This is where I belong." But my mother had an aunt here in St. George, and by the time I was 2, my mom had convinced my dad to move on over here for work and a little bit of a nicer area for family.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up in St. George. I can't claim California anymore.
Since the time you were 2.
Yeah, since the time I was 2, I was here in St. George.
Okay. And what did your parents do for work then when your dad relocated here?
Yeah, my father, at first he did a couple of construction jobs, sheetrock, the works. And then after, I think he said a year, he got a job with Sunrock, the cement block plant, and has been there ever since. What was that?
No, said sued them a couple times.
Really?
Oh, okay, cool. So tell me, did you have siblings?
Yeah, so I was an only child for 6 years, and then they had my little sister.
Okay. What was that like to have a sister that's 6 years younger than you?
I was very jealous. I think for a long time it was just me and my parents. And when you grow up with immigrant parents that are new to the area, you create a type of bond where you're in survival mode together. Especially in St. George, Utah, there's not a lot of diversity, especially then. Yeah. And so I remember my mom would tell me that I would crawl under my sister's crib and yell and say, "You don't love me anymore. You found a replacement for me."
Oh, no.
But very quickly, I fell in love with her, and we've had a great relationship ever since.
Awesome. What part of town did you live?
We lived in Dixie Downs area. We actually lived right on Dixie Downs, right by Lynn's.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then I think when I was 14 or 15, we moved over by Royal Oaks, just down the road a bit.
Gotcha. So where'd you go to high school?
Snow Canyon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that like going to school in an area that lacked some levels of diversity, that was predominantly white, probably predominantly culturally LDS? What was that like for you?
It was a learning experience for sure. Elementary school was at Dixie Downs, and that area was the most diverse, I would say. And so I did have a couple of Hispanic friends, and I grew up learning Spanish, and I didn't learn English until I was 6. I went to kindergarten. And so I translated a lot once I learned for the other kids. And so I felt very included in elementary school. And then when you got into middle school and high school, for a minute there, it was a little hard because it's very cliquey at no fault of their own. You go to the same church and you grew up in the same neighborhoods, and St. George has some pretty big names, people that settled the area. And so they click together, and that's okay. That makes sense. And at least for myself, I'm sure there's a lot of other second generation Americans that can maybe attest. You don't feel like you fit in very much here in America when you're trying to plant roots and be American and fit the stereotype. And then you go to Mexico and you're not quite Mexican enough because you're the cousin who lives in America who thinks she's better than everybody. And so
where do you belong? Yeah.
So where do you belong? So you do have to quickly have those type of conversations with yourself and learn to be okay with yourself, and grow up a little faster. But by the time I think high school hit, I joined debate, and I had a really solid group of kids that were a little misfits, and we all helped each other and supported each other. So good kids. Mm-hmm.
So debate, huh? Were you prepping for a legal career early on, or what was that about?
I think so. I was very much a nerd. So I took pride in school because my parents wanted me to do well, and it's very instilled upon you when you're little that, hey, we came to this country to give you a better life, and without them necessarily putting it on you, you do feel some sort of responsibility and a shot of guilt
To do well.
to do well. And then, not let that sacrifice that they make in leaving their homeland for you go to waste. And so I would say that school is very important to me, and my friends were going to join. And I thought, I have to too. I want to stick with them. And it was one of the best decisions I'd ever made. I didn't do any really extracurricular activities before then, but being part of something bigger than myself and just the classes was awesome. We did public forum and impromptu speaking. So
very cool.
Yeah, it kept you on your feet. Went all over the state 1 year, I think.
Yeah,
so,
that's fun. I did a little bit of that as well. So tell me about after high school, college, work, career. Where'd you go? What'd you do?
Sure. Yeah, so I graduated from Snow Canyon. I did my senior year. I did some college and AP classes because I didn't know what I wanted to do specifically. I didn't really know a lot of the resources that I had available to myself. So I started working at 16 to make money to go to college. And so I worked at Cafe Rio, the original one on Boulevard. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
So I worked there for 2 years and saved as much as I could. And then from there, I was recruited to work for a major telecommunications company. I had this couple that would come in all the time, at least once a week. And they were great, really nice, got to know them. And I think I was about to graduate, and they asked me, like, what are you doing? What do you want to do long term? And I was telling them that I hadn't decided, but I wanted to go to college. And she was one of their top reps in Utah for this telecommunications company, and she was going to move to Salt Lake. So she said, hey, I'm leaving. I really want you to apply. Give it a shot. Put your name in the hat. And I said, I'm not sure. I don't know anything about that field. I don't know anything about sales because it's a sales position. And she said, I promise you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. She was a Latina. She is a Latina. And she kind of pulled in my heartstrings in that regard. Yeah. And so anyway, so I told her no because I was too intimidated by it. And I was like, I want to go into nursing, and that really doesn't align with it. And I didn't know anything about it. So I said no. She actually sends her manager to Cafe Rio without telling me nothing, just to kind of my first interview to see how I do with customer service and interaction. So he shows up, and luckily, I'd like to pride myself on customer service. I really enjoy it, and I like people, and I've had to learn that growing up with my parents as translated for them. I had to be hyper aware of everyone around me and know a lot about them ahead of time. And so he walks up and I said, hey, you work for the telecommunication companies. Do you know Lisa? And we just hit it off and had a good conversation, and he left. And then he called me, said, hey, that was your first interview, and I really want to see you. So come on over. I said, okay.
So they stole you.
They're like, come over. And so they at least wanted me to give myself a chance to know the information and make an educated decision. And
so how long did you work in telecommunications then?
So I went there, and I started right out of high school.
Okay. And
what's funny is that you kind of think really small. At least I did. I thought really small. I just thought I have to make enough to go to college. And anyway, so I interview, I get it. They call me and they said, hey, we're going to fly you out to Salt Lake City, and we're going to pay for your training. It's going to take a month, and, put you up in a hotel and have you learn all the ins and outs of the role. And I said, great. I don't think I can be gone for a month. I need to save money. I can't just not go a whole month without being paid. And she said, no, silly. We're going to pay for this. Like, you're going to be paid for all of this and learn at the same time. And so anyway, I was there. I was a sales rep for a year and a half here. And I think I really found a love for people, and especially my, Hispanic community. At that point, St. George had grown enough. There was more diversity, and I was the only one that spoke Spanish in that store. And so I found a niche, and I dove in and loved it, and I killed it. I did a really good job. Yeah. It was a store on Bluff Street, so it's right by Dixie Down, Sunset, all that area. And so people would refer their friends and family to me because I was the only one in town that could speak Spanish and sold cell phones, and cell phone plans, and I could think about things that they needed, such as calling their home countries of Mexico, South America, Latin America. And so I really worked hard for them. And then they said, hey, we'd love for you to manage for us, be an assistant manager and start that track. And Unfortunately, that was the only store in southern Utah, south of Orem. So they said it would have to be in Salt Lake, but we'd love to have you. And at the time, I'd been going to school for nursing. I'd taken anatomy, and I hated it.
Okay.
I thought, because have you ever taken an anatomy class?
Yeah.
They have a cadaver laying on the bed, and they said, "This is Ben. He donated his life to science." And you're like, okay, let me just go look at your artery and pinpoint specific spots. It's very dehumanizing.
Yeah.
For me, at least. I have a lot of respect for nurses and people in the medical field, but it just wasn't for me. And I realized in sales that I was making so much more than I could have as a CNA, and so it again was me thinking small and short term, but if you get a kid right out of high school and you're making a pretty good amount of money, especially for this area, you kind of want to follow it and give yourself a chance to go. And so they convinced me. So I moved up to Salt Lake. I'm an assistant manager for them for about 2 years. And then overall, I worked as a manager for them 6.5, 7 years. And
so how many years in telecommunications then total? 6.5, 7?
7.
Okay.
I got to store management up in Salt Lake. I ran a couple of stores there, which entailed pretty much everything that a small business does. AT&T really entrusted their managers. So I would handle sales quotas. I would handle inventory, HR, legal for the most part. Obviously we have teams for that, but I would facilitate all of it. And so it was really rewarding and great. But it was, again, people oriented. My staff, my reps, they were my clients, right? And they had customers, and that's how I treated them. And it was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
Eventually I moved down to St. George to run the store here where I started. That was actually really great. The telecommunication company that I worked for decided that they were going to sell their rural shops to a third party. Still telecommunications, but the third party was going to handle it. And so they had a position for me in corporate up in Salt Lake, and I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to move up to Salt Lake anymore. I'd been there 3 years. I didn't like the snow. And so I decided to take the severance package and,
peace out.
Try something else. And so I actually went to Mountain America and was a manager for them for 9 months in their branch. Started from the bottom and learned everything as quickly as I could and coached and had a great time there. But it just didn't pay what I needed it to. And so luckily the stars aligned where AT&T called me and said, "Hey, we have a remote position for you. Will you take it?" So then I went back to AT&T as a business executive representative. So I had my business clients, and I would tailor to them, and I would be responsible for growing local footprint and business accounts. And that was great, but it was at home. And I think that is when I realized how much I loved people and getting to know people and helping people, and that role just did not fulfill it. So I was in it for about a year and started looking elsewhere because there was nothing in Southern Utah and I wanted to stay here. And so as grateful as I was for the pay and the position, and that AT&T called me back to go back with them, I couldn't do it. And so one of your most tenured paralegals put on Facebook that she had to leave the firm. She was going to have a baby.
Yeah, Magali.
Magali. And I reached out to her to ask her about it, and she had nothing but wonderful things to say about the firm, the partners there, the role itself, and how much of an impact she felt like she was making with our Hispanic community here locally. And she recommended that I apply, so I did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And here you are. And how long ago has that been now? How long you've been with the firm?
May of 2022. So not that long. It's going to be 2 years.
So coming up on 2 years, and you're now working as a paralegal.
Yes, sir.
At a personal injury law firm. Mm-hmm. And so what is that like? Like, how many clients are you handling at any given time?
Yeah. So I had a different experience as far as training goes. It was a little bit of baptism by fire, which I would like to hope that it's because you guys thought I could handle it. And I think now looking back, I'm very grateful for it because I learned so much. But I took over Magali's cases, which is about 75 cases
Yeah.
right off the bat. I think I trained with her for a month, and then she had to go. And so it was great. Now I'm down to 65, I believe, because we've dwindled it down and we took a little break from getting new clients, but now we're vamping back up now that I feel like I know really what I'm doing. And
what's that like handling, 70-ish clients at a time?
It's really, it requires a lot of time management, a lot of proactive work to ensure that you're on top of it. And you give us a lot of freedom to handle our cases the way we see fit. But I could apply a lot of the management skills that I learned in handling people in a store to this, because you really are just managing each of these individual cases for not only for the client, right? Me and the client have a management relationship. I manage the case for them as much as I can and work with them, but then I also manage the relationship that they have with the attorney and manage the attorney on my cases, if that makes sense. So if I need Jake to look at a specific thing, I have to ensure that I know that the client needs X, Y, and Z, and then bring it to Jake and say, hey, this is what I recommend. What do you think? And run it by him. So you're managing from both sides, and that's really rewarding and a lot of fun. And I really like it.
Do you ever get an opportunity to make an impact like on the Latino community or use your Spanish speaking skills?
Yes. And that was a little frightening at the beginning because I've been translating for my parents and my family since I was 6 years old. But you're scrappy, right? You figure it out on your own. I remember looking at legal documents, tax documents, translating at, hospital, the doctor, and you make it work as much as you can and explain it in a way that the client or the person, my family would understand. And I'd never really spoken Spanish in legal terms, especially adequately. I'd never had a way to test it. And so at first it was a little concerning because I would just explain what the word would mean and they would get it, obviously. But as the years or months have gone by, I've really tried to learn specifically what the right word is and what the professional way of saying things are in Spanish. And it's been really great. And I've been fortunate to have clients that understand and they're still very grateful for it and have patience with me. And I do feel like we make an impact, especially since our Hispanic clients are very proud. They're kind of like you were talking about earlier with St. George, how, you just tough it out and you get through it. And sure, you were hurt, but I'm not that hurt. I'm fine. I'm not bleeding. I'm just it's fine. Not a big deal. Though really, when you ask questions, their back is hurting and it didn't hurt before. Their neck is hurting. They have PTSD. They can't sleep. I had a client, we'd only get one shot to ask for settlement with the insurance companies, right? And so this particular client said, I'm fine. I'm doing really good. I'm ready to move on to the next phase of our case. And I had talked to her son before, and he said that she was not, that she was having a lot of anxiety still and was very emotional. And so I pushed back on it a little bit and I asked her, are you sure you're done? Because once we're done, we're done. And you can't come back later and ask for more money or more resources to help you. And she started crying because she's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm so weepy. I'm so sad all the time since this crash. And that's not like me. And it's embarrassing to say, but it's true. And we got her into 2 or 3 sessions of therapy and it fixed it entirely.
Wow.
And she was able to just move on with her life in a much more mentally stable way. And had I not spoke her language and asked her and pushed back on it, I don't think she would have ever done that. And who knows how long it would have taken to fix that on her own. So I do feel like we make an impact for sure. That's
awesome. Were you able to get her medical, including her therapy, covered by the insurance? Mm-hmm. Were you able to get her a settlement in her pocket on top of that?
Yes, sir. It wasn't astronomical. It was a good chunk, but she was very grateful for it. It was like, I would say 15,000.
15,000 is not a good chunk.
Well, I guess it's relative, right? I think we look at all the cases, but it is life-changing, but I guess we don't want you to have a great case, because if you have a great case, that means you have a lot of serious injuries. And so I guess that's maybe what I meant, but she was very grateful for it, loved it. All her coverage all her medical charges were covered. And we actually helped her with her property damage quite a bit too. But
What does that feel like to hand a check for $15,000 to somebody?
it's awesome. It's a feeling that you can't really explain until you're in it, until you've walked somebody, like you started from the beginning with them, you got them through their care, you managed them through everything, and at the very end, that feeling that you get, you can't get it anywhere else. Even in telecommunications, obviously I was helping people connect with their family in a way with their cell phone, but it's so indirect. Where this one, it's, that if they didn't take the time to come to our firm to talk to us, if they didn't trust us, if they didn't build rapport with us, they for sure would not have gotten the settlement that they got. That's what makes us want to go back every day. Yeah. I think, especially with how stressful our job is as paralegals, you need those moments to make it worth it.
Yeah, totally. So as like a second generation U.S. citizen, parents that immigrated here, and there's some unspoken pressure on you to do well. Mm-hmm. What do your parents think of you today? Do you think you make them proud?
I think so. For a long time, I didn't know if I did, but as I've gotten older, I think that ultimately a lot of the pressure that we put on ourselves is our own. It's in our head because, I've had everything. I've had the houses, I've had the cars, I've had the husband, I have had lots of money, and you get to a point sometimes where you lose it all or it changes very differently. Your entire life changes and you get rock bottom. You kind of have to rebuild. And I know that the only thing that they really wanted was for me to be happy. And that's kind of how I learned it. And so I think now being comfortable in myself, comfortable in the roles that I'm in and the opportunities that I have now, I think I'm proud of myself, and by proxy they are too, Yeah. So
what do you do? It gets pretty stressful sometimes in our line of work. What do you do to help manage that stress or have an outlet in some way? How do you keep that under control?
Good question. A couple of things. I think first, it's having a good leader. I work with Jake Spencer, the attorney there, and he's a great leader in that he knows what makes me tick, what my why is, why I come to work. And so he will hone in on that for me, especially when it gets hard. He'll remind me of what's important and kind of be the guardrails for me. Yeah. And then secondly, this one required a lot of trial and error, but because we have a lot of freedom and because we can run our cases like we want to, you have to create your own systems. And systems. Without my systems at work, it would be too much because every task is so important and every task require more steps. Some require 10, some require 3. And if an attorney comes and says, hey, can you do this for me? And it takes 10 steps, but it's more of a priority than this other task that takes 3 steps. You just have to be on top of it and know it's worth it for me to spend the time doing this other task when I could check this off faster, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I personally have to have the systems in place to keep myself on track, and it's been nice to figure it out on my own and see the reward now.
Is there anything else that you would want people to know about personal injury attorneys or, personal injury paralegals that maybe people don't realize or think of? Yeah.
I think something very important that anyone who's been in an accident needs to remember is that, yes, you can work on this case on your own. You could talk to an adjuster. You can send in your medical bills. You could do that and maybe get some of it recovered. However, the reason why I think that you hire an attorney and a paralegal team is that we can give a voice to your story in a way that, because hopefully you've never been in an accident, you don't ever have to think about. So we compile everything for you. We create that narrative of all the work that you put into feeling better. And then we also create a voice for the things that you can't see, the emotional side of it, the having to, I have a client who couldn't hold her twin babies for months because she was in so much pain. She had a fusion in her neck. And so on your own, you can say that, but most likely an adjuster isn't going to take it into consideration. But we can put it on paper, put it in that demand, and really give it a fighting shot to be considered when they reimburse you. And so if you're thinking about it, if you've been in an accident and there is more than just the physical damage, it's worth it to have somebody in your corner to fight for you.
So I thought most people that hire personal injury attorneys are fakers and they're just looking for a payout. How many of your clients are fakers?
Oh my gosh, none. And I think also that speaks to us as well, is that we ask questions. We set expectations with the client. We don't want somebody to come in and just fake it and just say, oh, my back hurts longer than it does, or, oh, we're just going to get a year of treatment and we didn't need it, and exaggerate it. We want you to be honest and transparent with us so that we can be transparent and honest with the adjuster. And the goal is not to go to litigation, but we treat it as if one day we're going to go to litigation. And if you're going to have to present in front of a trial, in front of a jury, you can't be a faker. You can't back up your claim if you really didn't experience the things that you experienced. And so I think having us to be able to say, hey, push, again, like we said in the last story, push back a little bit and say, do you really need this? Is this really what's going on? And we keep you from that being even a thought. And you don't have to do that to get a recovery either, which I think is a misconception sometimes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to get on video and walk us through who you are and what it's like to be a personal injury paralegal.
Thanks for having me.